Hello and welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. My name is Laura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you truly love your ma'am, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, keep watching the video, and comment on how much you love ma'am. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Alright, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. In this first part of our story, I want you to imagine that you are walking with me, slowly, step by step, through a quiet early morning street, because this story is not just a story, it is a journey, and it is a journey inside your mind, inside your fear, inside your hope, and inside the part of you that wants to grow. And as we walk together, you hear my voice gently guiding you, almost like a friend who knows your heart, and the sky above us is still soft and pale because the sun has not fully risen yet, and maybe that is a symbol, maybe it means something, maybe it reflects how you feel when you think about failure and the fear of failure, because fear always feels like a morning before sunrise, like a world that has not yet become bright. And as we move through this quiet place, you sense this question inside you. Why am I afraid to fail? Why does failure make me feel small, or weak, or not enough? And maybe you have carried this fear for many years, maybe since childhood, maybe since school, maybe since a moment when someone laughed at you or judged you or told you that you were not good enough. And these moments, these memories, sometimes stay in your body like shadows. And they follow you even when you try to push them away. And now, here in this story, as we take these steps, you are not alone, because you and I are exploring this fear together, and this whole journey is created for you, for your English practice, yes, but also for your heart, because to speak English with confidence, you need more than vocabulary. You need a peaceful mind. You need courage, you need warmth in your voice, and that warmth only grows when fear becomes smaller. So let us continue walking, and let us begin from the very beginning. A young person, maybe like you, maybe exactly you, standing at the edge of something new, feeling the weight of fear in their chest. Our story begins with a young learner named Daniel, though his name could easily be yours, or your friends, or anyone who has ever wanted to do something brave, but felt that heavy stone of fear blocking the way. Daniel wakes up early one morning, much earlier than usual, because today he is supposed to take a small but important step. He must present a short speech in his English class, only 2 minutes, nothing complicated, nothing dangerous, nothing too difficult, but inside his mind, it feels like standing on a tall cliff, and below that cliff is a deep valley filled with all his past failures, all his mistakes, all his doubts, and this valley scares him. He sits on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking a little, and he whispers to himself, "What if I fail again? What if I speak too slowly? What if they laugh? What if my voice disappears?" These questions repeat again and again, like a broken record, and the more he listens to them, the more he believes them. He tries to breathe deeply, but his breath feels tight, as if his chest is locked, and this makes him feel even smaller. Do you know that feeling? Have you ever held fear in your body until it felt heavy, almost like a weight pressing on your shoulders? That is where Daniel is now, sitting on his bed in the early morning light, and even though the world is peaceful around him, his mind is loud with worry. He stands up slowly, walks to the small mirror on the wall, and looks at himself. He sees a young person with tired eyes, with a heart that wants to be brave, but does not know how. He tries to smile at his reflection, but the smile looks weak, like it is afraid to show itself. "Why am I so scared?" he asks himself softly. It's only a short speech. And yet the fear feels real. Fear does not always follow logic. Fear does not always listen to reason. Fear comes from old stories inside us, stories we did not choose but learned from the world around us, from experiences that left marks. And as Daniel keeps looking in the mirror, he suddenly remembers a moment many years ago, when he was a child, standing in front of his class, trying to read a simple sentence, but he stumbled over the words. He paused. The class laughed. He tried again. More laughter. And that laughter, that small moment, stayed with him for many years. Now, even as a young adult, that memory still hurts. It still controls him. It still tells him, be careful. Don't try too hard. Don't speak too loudly. You might fail again. And it is this voice inside him that he must face today. Daniel leaves his house and begins his walk to school. The air outside is cool, and the street is empty. The only sound is his own footsteps. As he walks, he thinks about the speech he prepared. He wrote it with care. He practiced it alone in his room. But every time he practices, his voice feels uncertain, as if it does not belong to him. Why can't I speak naturally? He asks himself. Why do I sound nervous? And while he walks, his thoughts become heavier. He imagines himself standing in class, forgetting everything, freezing, embarrassing himself. He imagines his classmates looking at him with confused eyes or impatient expressions. And with every imagined moment, his fear grows. But then something unexpected happens. As he passes a small park, he notices an old man sitting on a bench, reading a book. The old man looks calm, peaceful, fully present in the quiet morning. Daniel slows down. He is not sure why. Something about the man's calm energy pulls him closer. He almost stops walking completely, just watching the man's peaceful face. And then, the man raises his head, looks at Daniel, and smiles gently, as if he can see the fear inside him. Daniel feels a sudden warmth in his chest, a small sense of comfort, and he nods politely before continuing to walk. That tiny moment, that small smile, helps him breathe a little easier. But fear does not disappear so quickly. As Daniel reaches the school, his stomach tightens again. He walks into the classroom, and his classmates are already talking and laughing. They seem relaxed, but he feels tense. His teacher, a kind woman named Miss Harper, greets him with a warm smile, but even that smile cannot fully calm him. He sits at his desk, his hands sweating slightly, his mind racing. Miss Harper begins the class, speaks gently, explains the plan for the day, and then says, "Today we will continue practicing short English presentations. Who would like to go first?" Daniel feels his heart jump. No one raises a hand. The room becomes silent. Miss Harper looks around, waiting. Daniel looks down at his notebook, wishing he could disappear. Then Miss Harper says, "Daniel, would you like to try today?" For a moment, the whole world seems to stop. His breath freezes. His chest tightens. He wants to say no. He wants to hide. But he also knows he cannot hide forever. After a few seconds, he nods slowly. His legs feel weak as he stands and walks to the front of the classroom. His heart beats loudly. His hands shake slightly. And when he reaches the front, he looks at his classmates and suddenly feels as if he is standing on that high cliff from his imagination. For a moment, he says nothing. Silence stretches through the room. He hears someone shifting in their seat. He hears the clock ticking on the wall. And in that silence, the fear becomes even stronger. His mind goes blank. His voice disappears. And then it happens. He whispers the first sentence, but it comes out too soft, almost like a breath instead of a voice. A few students lean forward, trying to hear him. Someone coughs. Daniel's voice trembles. He tries again, a little louder this time, but his mind is still foggy. And suddenly, something in him breaks. He forgets the next part of his speech. He forgets everything he practiced. His face heats up. His throat tightens. For a moment, he feels like running out of the classroom, like escaping from this terrifying moment. But he does not move. He just stands there, feeling the pressure of fear, feeling the familiar pain of failure rising inside him. And then, in this quiet, shaky moment, he hears another sound, Miss Harper's voice. Calm, warm, encouraging. "Take your time, Daniel," she says softly. "It's okay." Those simple words help him breathe again. He closes his eyes for a moment, just 1 second, and tells himself quietly, "It's okay. Just breathe." And then he tries again. This time, his voice is still soft, but it is steady. He speaks slowly, one sentence at a time, and as he continues, he starts remembering his words. Not all of them, not perfectly, but enough. And something strange happens. The more he speaks, the more the fear loosens its grip. It does not disappear, but it becomes lighter, like a cloud that slowly drifts away. When he finishes his speech, the room is silent again, but this time the silence is warm, calm. Ms. Harper smiles. "Thank you, Daniel," she says. "That was brave." His classmates nod politely. No one laughs. No one mocks him. No one judges him. And in that moment, Daniel realizes something important. He did not fail. He struggled, yes. He felt afraid, yes. He forgot some words, yes. But he did not run away. He stayed. He spoke. He finished. And that is not failure. That is courage. That is strength. That is growth. After class, Daniel walks outside and sits under a tree near the school entrance. The sun is now fully shining, bright and warm. He sits quietly, thinking about what happened. He feels tired, but in a good way, like someone who has climbed a small but meaningful mountain. He whispers to himself, "I did it. It was not perfect, but I did it." And the more he repeats that thought, the lighter he feels. For the first time in a long time, he sees that failure is not a monster waiting to attack him. Failure is simply part of learning, part of trying, part of living. And as he sits under the tree, he remembers the old man from the park, the calm smile, the peaceful energy. He thinks, maybe I can be like that one day. Maybe fear does not have to control me forever. He stands up slowly, takes a deep breath, and begins walking home. This time, his steps feel different. They feel stronger, more stable, more alive. He knows he has a long journey ahead. He knows fear will return again. But he also knows he can face it, one small step at a time. And that is how every journey begins, with one step, one moment of courage, one soft but honest voice saying, "I will try." And now, as you listen to this story, I want you to think about your own journey. Think about something you want to do but are afraid to try. Think about a moment when you stood on your own cliff, looking down, feeling the weight of fear. And ask yourself gently, what if I take one small step? What if I try even if I might fail? Because failure is not the end. Failure is not your enemy. Failure is simply a teacher, a guide, a signal that you are growing. And just like Daniel, you too can begin to walk, slowly but surely, toward a brighter morning, toward a stronger voice, toward a future where fear no longer decides your path. And that is the first step into the unknown, the beginning of your transformation. The next morning begins with a soft golden light touching the edges of Daniel's window, and even though the world outside looks peaceful and calm, something inside him still feels heavy, because courage is not something that stays forever after one moment of bravery. Courage must be rebuilt again and again, like a small fire that needs gentle breath to keep burning, and as Daniel wakes up, he realizes that even though yesterday was a small victory, today brings a new wave of fear, old and familiar, whispering again in his mind, louder than before, telling him that what he did yesterday was not enough, telling him that maybe it was just luck, telling him that real confidence is far away, too far, almost impossible to reach. He lies in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, feeling this quiet battle happening inside him, a battle between hope and fear, between the part of him that wants to grow and the part of him that wants to hide. And even though he knows this battle well, it still surprises him how strong the fear can feel, how quickly it can return, like a shadow that appears each morning before the sun rises fully. He whispers slowly, "Why am I scared again? I already did something brave yesterday." But fear is not logical. Fear does not care about yesterday. Fear only cares about now, about this moment, about the small doubts that live inside his heart. As Daniel gets ready for the day, he notices that his hands shake slightly when he buttons his shirt, and he tries to ignore it, but the shaking is a sign that his fear still has power over him. He goes to the mirror again, the same mirror where he looked at himself yesterday morning, and this time his expression is different, not only scared but confused, because he thought that after facing his fear once, it would be easier the next time. But it is not easier, it feels harder, almost as if the fear is fighting back, trying one more time to control him. He touches his chest lightly, feels his heartbeat, fast and uneven, and then he whispers again, "Maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe yesterday was the only time I could do it." These thoughts slowly wrap around him like a thick fog, making everything unclear, and for a moment, he considers staying home, avoiding class, avoiding speaking, avoiding the feeling of failure that he is sure will come again. But then he remembers something Ms. Harper told the class a long time ago. Growth is not one big moment. Growth is many small moments. Some days you move forward. Some days you feel stuck. But if you keep showing up, you will grow. This memory, small and quiet, gives him enough strength to open the door and step outside. The air outside is cooler than yesterday, but fresh, almost sharp, and as Daniel begins walking, he can feel his mind filling with thoughts, fast and loud, like a river moving too quickly to follow. He remembers his old failures again, not just the one from childhood, but others too, moments when he tried something new and did not succeed, moments when he felt judged, moments when he felt ashamed, moments when he wanted to disappear. And the more he remembers these moments, the more he believes that maybe he is just someone who will always fail. But then, as he walks past the same small park he passed yesterday, something inside him tells him to slow down. He feels drawn to the bench again, the bench where the old man was sitting yesterday, the man who gave him that calm, gentle smile. Today, the bench is empty. The old man is not there. And for some reason, this makes Daniel feel a little sad, because that simple smile yesterday felt like a small gift, like a reminder that he was not invisible, that someone saw him, even for a moment. He sits on the bench for a minute, breathing slowly, trying to calm himself. He watches the trees move in the breeze, their leaves dancing gently, almost as if they are telling him to slow down, to breathe, to let go. But fear does not leave so easily. When Daniel stands up again, that familiar tight feeling returns to his body, especially in his stomach, and when he reaches the school, the nervousness grows even stronger. Today, the hallway feels louder, the students seem more confident, the world feels bigger, and he feels smaller. When he enters the classroom, Miss Harper is already writing something on the board. She turns around, smiles warmly, and says, "Good morning, Daniel." Her voice is soft, gentle, grounding. But even her kindness cannot fully quiet the storm in his mind. He sits at his desk, places his notebook on the table, and tries to calm his shaking hands. His classmates are chatting, laughing, relaxed as always, and Daniel wonders why they do not seem afraid of anything. Why is he the only one who feels like this? Why is he the only one who fears failing again? He looks around the room, trying to find even one nervous face, but everyone seems fine. And that makes the fear stronger, because now he feels alone with it. Miss Harper starts the class with a listening exercise, something simple, something Daniel usually enjoys, but today he cannot focus. The words float through the room like soft waves, but they do not reach him. He feels disconnected, distant, lost inside his own thoughts. When the exercise ends, Miss Harper announces that today the class will work in pairs to practice small conversations. Daniel feels a small relief. Speaking to one person is easier than speaking to the whole class, but even then, the fear whispers, "What if you forget words? What if you make a mistake? What if they think you're slow?" He tries to ignore it. His partner today is a classmate named Mia, a quiet girl who always listens carefully and speaks kindly. She smiles at Daniel and says, "Let's try the conversation slowly. It's okay if we make mistakes." Her gentle voice calms him a little, and for the first few minutes, the conversation goes smoothly. His voice is still soft, but it does not shake. He answers her questions slowly, and she listens patiently. It almost feels normal. It almost feels comfortable. But then something small happens, so small that another person might not even notice it. Daniel forgets one simple word. A very simple word. And that tiny moment of forgetting triggers something big inside him. He freezes. His breath stops. His heart jumps. His mind goes blank. Mia waits kindly, giving him time, but Daniel's fear grows faster and faster, louder and louder, until he feels overwhelmed again. He finally remembers the word, but by then, the fear has already taken control. He apologizes, even though there is nothing to apologize for. Mia smiles and says softly, "It's okay, really." But her kindness does not reach him, because the fear is too loud now, echoing in his mind, telling him, "See? You can't even say simple words. You will fail again and again." After the pair practice, Ms. Harper asks the class to share what they talked about. Each pair speaks for a moment. When it is Daniel and Mia's turn, Daniel feels the panic rising again. His throat feels tight. His voice feels trapped. He tries to speak, but the words come out confused, almost tangled. Miss Harper notices his nervousness immediately and says gently, "Take your time, Daniel." But even with her support, the fear makes him feel exposed, fragile, almost embarrassed. When he finally finishes speaking, he sits down quickly, staring at his desk. His face is warm. His hands are trembling. He feels like he failed again, even though he did not fail at all. But fear has its own story, and right now, that story is louder than the truth. When class ends, Daniel walks out of the building quickly. He does not talk to anyone. He does not stop to think. He just walks, fast, almost running, until he reaches the small park again. He goes straight to the empty bench and sits down heavily. His breathing is uneven. His eyes sting lightly, not from crying, but from holding back tears. He whispers to himself, "Why can't I be normal? Why do I get scared so easily?" He feels frustrated, disappointed, angry at himself. For a few minutes, he sits there in silence, letting the fear and frustration sit with him. He looks at the ground, feeling small. And then, something familiar happens. The old man appears again, walking slowly toward the bench, holding the same book from yesterday. He sits down next to Daniel quietly, without asking any questions. He simply rests the book on his lap and looks forward, breathing calmly. After a moment, he turns his head slightly and says in a soft, warm voice, "You look troubled today." Daniel hesitates. He does not know this man, but somehow the man feels safe, comfortable, easy to talk to. So Daniel nods slowly. "I'm just afraid," he whispers. "Afraid of failing again." The old man studies his face with gentle eyes and then nods slowly, as if he understands something very deep. "Fear is loud," the man says softly. But fear does not tell the whole truth. Daniel looks up, surprised by the simple but meaningful words. "But it feels so real," he says. "It feels stronger than me." The old man smiles gently. "Fear always tries to speak the loudest," he says. "But courage is quiet. Courage is small at first. Courage whispers. And you must learn to listen to that small whisper, even when fear is shouting." The words settle inside Daniel's heart like small glowing stones, warm and comforting. "But what if I fail again?" Daniel asks softly. "You will," the old man says calmly. "And that is not a bad thing. Failure is not a wall. Failure is a door." Daniel frowns slightly, not understanding. The man continues, "When you fail, you learn something about yourself. You learn how strong you are. You learn what you can handle. And each time you fail and continue, you open a new door inside your life." Daniel thinks about this quietly. "So, failure is not the end?" he asks. The man shakes his head gently. "No. Failure is part of beginning." They sit in silence for a moment, just listening to the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Daniel feels his breath slowly returning to normal. The old man closes his book and says, "Tell me, young man, what scares you the most?" Daniel thinks carefully. "I'm scared people will judge me," he says. "I'm scared they will think I'm not good enough. I'm scared my mistakes will make me look stupid." The old man nods again. "I understand," he says. "But let me ask you something. When you see someone else make a mistake, do you laugh at them? Do you think they're stupid? Or do you think they're learning?" Daniel thinks for a moment. "I think they're learning," he says softly. The old man smiles. "Then why are you kinder to others than you are to yourself?" Daniel does not have an answer. The question surprises him. He has never thought about it like that before. The old man continues gently. "The fear of failure hides inside the fear of judgment. You worry about what others think. But the truth is, people are too busy with their own fears to worry about yours." Daniel lets those words sink into him like soft rain. He realizes something important. He has always imagined that others are watching him closely, judging every mistake, but maybe, just maybe, they are not. Maybe they are thinking about their own lives, their own fears, their own struggles. And maybe that means he is free. Free to try. Free to make mistakes. Free to grow. The old man stands up slowly, using the bench for support. "Walk with your fear," he says softly. Do not run from it. Fear will speak loudly, but you must keep walking anyway. That is how you grow. He places a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder and gives him one more warm, knowing smile before walking away. Daniel watches him disappear around the corner of the park. The man's presence leaves a quiet strength behind, a small calmness that settles into Daniel's chest. He takes a deep breath, feeling something shift inside him, not a dramatic transformation, but the beginning of one. Later that day, as Daniel walks home, he thinks about everything the old man said, and slowly, very slowly, something becomes clear to him. He realizes that fear is not the problem. Fear is natural. Fear is human. The problem is how he listens to fear, how he gives it more power than it deserves. And now, after this unexpected conversation, he begins to wonder, what would happen if he listened to courage instead, even if it is quiet, even if it is small? He reaches his house, opens the door, and steps inside. The quiet room welcomes him like a soft blanket. He sits at his desk, takes out his notebook, and writes one sentence at the top of the page: "Failure is a door." And as he looks at those words, something inside him softens. He feels a new kind of curiosity growing, curiosity about what is behind that door, curiosity about who he might become if he keeps walking, keeps trying, keeps speaking even when the fear tries to silence him. And that is the day when fear spoke loudly again, but for the first time, Daniel did not let fear decide the whole story. He began to listen to something else, something quieter, something softer, something stronger. And that small shift, that small choice to keep going, is the beginning of real transformation. The next morning arrives quietly, with a soft gray sky and a gentle breeze that moves the curtains in Daniel's room like slow waves, and when he opens his eyes, he feels something different, something small but important, as if the fear inside him has changed shape during the night, not gone, not defeated, but quieter, more patient, almost waiting for him to make the next move. And as he sits up on his bed, stretching his tired arms, he thinks about the old man's words from yesterday, those warm, wise words that somehow stayed with him even as he slept, words that seemed to float through his mind again and again. Failure is a door. Courage whispers. Walk with your fear, and these thoughts give him a new kind of energy. Not strong enough to erase the fear completely, but strong enough to help him breathe a little easier. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel feels a very soft sense of hope, the kind of hope that grows slowly, like a seed under the soil waiting for the sun. He gets dressed, and this time his hands are not shaking as much. He looks at himself in the mirror once more and sees a young person who is afraid, yes, but also trying, truly trying, and he whispers softly, "I can grow." And even though it feels strange to say it out loud, it also feels good, almost comforting. He leaves his room, steps into the morning air, and starts walking to school. As he walks, he thinks about his English class, about the moments when his voice disappears, about the times when fear locks his throat like a closed gate, and he asks himself, why does fear control my voice? That question stays with him as he moves down the street, and he begins to imagine his voice as something alive, something that wants to rise, something that wants to speak, something that wants to be free. But fear keeps pushing it down, like a heavy hand pressing on its back. And then he remembers something else the old man said. Courage whispers. Maybe his voice is the whisper. Maybe his voice is the part of him that is trying to grow, trying to rise, trying to break free from the fear that has held him for too long. As he crosses the small park, he looks automatically at the bench, wondering if the old man is there again. But today the bench is empty, just like the early morning 2 days ago. Daniel stops and stares at the empty bench. The air feels peaceful. The trees move gently. And he realizes something. The old man does not need to be there today because the important part, the lesson, the warmth, the encouragement, is already inside him now. When Daniel arrives at school, the hallway is quieter than usual, maybe because he is a little early, or maybe because the day itself feels softer. He walks into the classroom and finds Miss Harper arranging papers on her desk. She looks up and gives him a bright smile, the kind of smile that feels real, not just polite. "Good morning, Daniel," she says warmly. "You're early today." Daniel nods shyly and says, "Good morning," and even though his voice is soft, it feels steady, more grounded. He sits at his desk and takes out his notebook. Inside the front page, he sees the words he wrote yesterday. Failure is a door. He reads them slowly, letting each word settle into his mind like gentle stones on a quiet path. When the rest of the students arrive, the room becomes louder, filled with energy and conversation. But today, Daniel does not feel as overwhelmed by the noise. He watches his classmates talk and laugh, and instead of telling himself he is different from them, he asks himself, what if they also feel afraid sometimes? That simple question changes how he sees the room. He looks more carefully and notices that some students touch their hair nervously, some tap their fingers on the desk, some avoid eye contact, some speak quickly as if filling silence, and in that moment, Daniel realizes something powerful. Fear is not only inside him. Fear lives in almost everyone. He is not alone. He has never been alone. And that small realization feels like a soft light turning on inside his chest. Miss Harper begins the class with a warm smile and says, "Today we are going to practice storytelling." The word storytelling wakes something inside Daniel, something curious, something excited, but also something scared. Storytelling means speaking. Storytelling means using your voice. Storytelling means sharing something personal. And yet, even though he feels afraid, a small part of him also feels drawn to it, like a soft pull, like a quiet invitation to let his voice rise. Miss Harper explains the exercise. Each student will tell a short, simple story about a memory, just 1 minute long, nothing complicated, nothing too emotional, just a small story from their life. She says they can speak slowly, take their time, and there is no pressure to be perfect. But fear does not care about instructions. Fear only hears the part where he must speak in front of everyone again. As students begin sharing their stories one by one, Daniel listens carefully. He notices something interesting. Even the confident students make mistakes. Even the ones who seem calm pause sometimes. Even the ones who speak loudly sometimes forget words and laugh nervously. And no one judges them. No one laughs at them. No one thinks they are foolish. They simply keep speaking, keep trying, keep moving forward. Watching them gives Daniel a new thought. Maybe mistakes are normal. Maybe fear is normal. Maybe he does not need to hide or apologize for them. And when Miss Harper says, "Daniel, would you like to share your story next?" he feels the usual wave of fear inside him, but this time something else rises too, something that feels like courage, something soft but steady. He stands up slowly, and as he walks to the front of the class, he feels his heartbeat quickening, but he also feels his feet touching the ground firmly. He looks at his classmates. They look back, waiting. Not judging, just waiting. He takes a slow breath, remembers the old man's gentle smile, and begins speaking. His voice is soft at first, shaky, almost fragile, like a small bird trying to take its first flight. He starts telling a simple story about the first time he learned to ride a bicycle when he was a child, about how he fell many times, how his knees were bruised, how embarrassed he felt every time he lost balance, but also how he kept trying until one day he finally rode down the street without falling, and the wind touched his face like freedom. As he speaks, something beautiful happens. His voice begins to rise. Slowly, gently, naturally. It becomes stronger, warmer, more alive. The fear is still there, sitting somewhere inside him, but this time fear is not controlling the story. His voice is. When he finishes, the room is quiet for a moment, and then his classmates begin to clap softly, not loudly but sincerely, like a warm wave of support. Miss Harper smiles warmly and says, "Well done, Daniel. That was clear, honest, and brave." Daniel feels a strange, surprising feeling in his body, like a small spark of pride, something he has not felt in a long, long time. He walks back to his seat, and as he sits down, he feels his heart soften, as if something heavy has been lifted from it. For the rest of the class, Daniel pays attention with a different kind of focus, not because he is forcing himself to, but because he feels connected now to the room, to the lesson, to his classmates, and most importantly, to his own voice. After class, as students gather their things and leave the room, Miss Harper stops Daniel gently and says, "I'm proud of you. Your voice is growing." He feels a warm wave move through him, like sunlight touching the surface of cold water. He smiles softly and says, "Thank you," and the words feel natural, comfortable, honest. As he walks out of school and heads toward the small park again, he notices that the world looks different, not because the trees have changed, or the sky has changed, or the park has changed, but because something inside him has changed. He sits on the bench, the same bench where he met the old man, and he looks around, half expecting the man to appear again, but he does not. Still, Daniel feels his presence, not physically, but in memory, in wisdom, in the soft courage growing inside him. He whispers to the empty space next to him, "Thank you," as if the old man can still hear him, as if the morning air can carry his gratitude. Daniel takes out his notebook again and writes 3 new words under the first sentence, "My voice matters." He looks at those words carefully, almost shyly, letting them settle into his heart like new seeds. He thinks about all the times he wanted to speak, but did not, all the moments when fear silenced him, all the times he let doubt take control. And now he realizes something important. His voice has always wanted to rise. It has always wanted to speak, to express, to grow. Fear is the thing that pushed it down, but now, slowly, courage is helping it rise again. As the afternoon sun begins to warm the park, Daniel thinks deeply about what it means to have a voice. Not just a physical voice, but an inner voice, the voice of truth, the voice of honesty, the voice of dreams, the voice of confidence. He realizes that finding your voice is not only about speaking clearly or using good English. It is about trusting yourself. It is about believing that what you say has value. It is about knowing that your voice can make space in the world, even if it shakes, even if it is soft, even if it is imperfect. He sits there for a long time, thinking, breathing, feeling the gentle changes happening inside him. He begins to understand that his journey is not about becoming fearless. It is about learning to rise even when fear is present. It is about letting his voice grow one moment at a time, one sentence at a time, one breath at a time. And as he stands up, ready to walk home, the world feels brighter, not because the day has become sunnier, but because he has. And that is the moment when Daniel begins to see his voice differently, not as something weak, not as something small, not as something controlled by fear, but as something rising, something learning, something growing. And for the first time, he truly believes that his voice deserves to be heard. The next day begins with soft rain falling outside Daniel's window, the kind of gentle rain that makes the world feel quiet and thoughtful, as if the sky itself is whispering something calm and patient. And when Daniel wakes up, the first thing he hears is the steady rhythm of the raindrops touching the roof, tapping like soft fingers on a drum, and something about that sound slows him down, makes him breathe deeper, helps him step into the day with a calmer heart, because even though he knows fear is still inside him, he also knows that courage is there too, small but real, like a candle that keeps glowing even in the rain. He gets ready slowly, moving with a kind of peaceful rhythm that he has not felt in a long time, and as he puts on his jacket and steps outside, the cool air brushes against his face like a refreshing touch, reminding him that each day is a new beginning. Each day is a chance to learn something new about himself, his voice, his courage, and his fear. The rain is light enough that he does not need an umbrella, and as he walks, he feels the drops land softly on his hair and shoulders, tiny, cool, almost playful, and he thinks to himself that life is full of moments like this. Moments when things are not perfect but still beautiful. As Daniel reaches the small park, he slows down, listening to the sound of the rain falling on the leaves, creating a soft music in the morning air, and he stops for a moment near the bench where he met the old man. The bench is wet now, covered in little drops that shine like tiny glass beads, and even though the old man is not there, Daniel feels his presence again, not in a dramatic or magical way, but in a human way. The way a warm memory stays with you and guides you when you need it. He thinks about the man's words, "Failure is a door," and as the rain continues to fall gently around him, those words feel even more true, almost like the rain itself is repeating them, reminding him that every mistake he makes is not the end of something, but the beginning of something new. He smiles softly to himself, then continues walking toward the school, feeling calmer than he expected to feel on such a rainy morning. When he arrives at class, the room is filled with a quiet kind of energy, the kind that comes on rainy days when everyone moves a little slower, talks a little softer, listens a little more deeply. Miss Harper greets the class with a gentle smile and says, "Today we are going to practice something very important, making mistakes." Some students look confused. Some look curious. Some giggle quietly. But Miss Harper continues with the same warm, patient tone. Making mistakes is part of learning. It is part of speaking. It is part of life. And today, I want you to learn how to make mistakes with confidence. The room becomes completely silent. Daniel feels his chest tighten a little, not from fear this time, but from surprise. He has never heard a teacher say something like that before. Make mistakes with confidence? He wonders what that could possibly mean. Ms. Harper explains the activity. Each student will work in pairs again, but this time, the purpose is not to speak perfectly. The purpose is to speak freely, even if mistakes happen, even if sentences get messy, even if words get mixed up. She says, your goal today is to speak without stopping, even if you say something wrong. Keep going. Do not correct yourself. Do not apologize. Just speak. Daniel feels a strange combination of fear and curiosity rising inside him. On one hand, the idea of speaking freely without correcting mistakes feels scary, almost dangerous, like stepping into a dark room without knowing what is inside. But on the other hand, something about the challenge excites him. It feels like an invitation to break free from the pressure to be perfect, to let his voice flow without being controlled by fear. This time, Daniel is paired with a classmate named Leo, a friendly boy with a warm smile and a calm, easygoing energy. Leo says, "Don't worry, we can try it slowly," and his relaxed tone helps Daniel feel more comfortable. They start the exercise, taking turns speaking about simple topics like their favorite food, a place they visited, or something funny that happened recently. At first, Daniel speaks carefully, watching his words, trying not to make mistakes, but Leo encourages him, "Just keep talking. It doesn't have to be perfect." And something surprising begins to happen. Daniel starts to speak more freely. He still makes mistakes, of course, small ones, simple ones, but instead of freezing, instead of apologizing, instead of feeling embarrassed, he keeps going, just like Ms. Harper asked. And with each small mistake, he feels something strange and new. He feels lighter. He feels freer. He feels a small joy growing inside him, like he is discovering a new part of himself. But then, something unexpected happens. In the middle of one of his sentences, Daniel forgets a very simple word again, and for a moment, the old fear rises quickly, sharp and familiar, like a cold hand gripping his chest. He hesitates. He feels his throat tighten. He feels the old panic rising. Leo notices and says gently, "It's okay. Keep going. Use another word. Or just describe it." And for a second, Daniel feels stuck, unsure, afraid. But then he remembers the old man's voice, "Walk with your fear," and something inside him softens, then opens. Instead of freezing, Daniel takes a slow breath and describes the word in the simplest way he can. And it works. Leo understands him and nods. And instead of looking embarrassed, Daniel feels proud. He made a mistake, yes, but he walked through it. He found a way. And that changes something deep inside him. When the pair activity ends, Ms. Harper calls for everyone's attention. "How did it feel?" she asks the class. Students raise their hands, sharing their experiences. Some say it was fun. Some say it was hard. Some say they felt nervous at first, but more comfortable after a few minutes. Then Daniel raises his hand slowly. Miss Harper nods toward him, and he speaks softly but clearly, "I made mistakes, but I kept going." The class listens quietly as he continues, "I didn't stop. I didn't feel ashamed. I just spoke." Miss Harper smiles warmly and says, "That is the point, Daniel. Speaking is not about being perfect. It is about expressing yourself, even when mistakes happen. Especially when mistakes happen." Her words sink into Daniel's heart like warm sunlight through rain clouds. After class, as Daniel walks through the hallway, he feels a new kind of confidence growing inside him, not loud or dramatic, but soft, real, steady. He realizes that his fear of failure has always been connected to his fear of making mistakes. Every time he made a mistake in the past, he felt shame. He felt small. He felt judged. But today, for the first time, he made mistakes and did not hide from them. Today, he walked through the mistakes. Today, he stayed present, stayed calm, stayed true to himself. And that small victory feels bigger than anything he has experienced so far on this journey. When he reaches the park again, the rain has stopped, and the world feels washed clean, fresh, and quiet. He sits on the same bench, though it's still a little damp from the rain, but he doesn't mind. He takes out his notebook and writes something new. Mistakes help me speak. He looks at those words, surprised by how powerful they feel. He realizes that mistakes are not signs of weakness. Mistakes are signs of trying. Mistakes are signs of learning. Mistakes are signs of courage. And he thinks about all the times in his life when he tried to avoid mistakes, when he stayed quiet to protect himself, when he let fear stop him from expressing his true thoughts and feelings. He sees now that by avoiding mistakes, he was avoiding growth. He was avoiding opportunities. He was avoiding himself. As he sits on the damp bench, watching the soft light of the afternoon sun touch the wet grass, Daniel begins to understand something important. Mistakes are not something to fear. Mistakes are something to welcome, something to explore, something to learn from. And the more he thinks about it, the more he realizes that every meaningful thing in life begins with mistakes: learning to walk, learning to read, learning to ride a bicycle, learning to speak a language. Nothing important starts perfectly. Everything important starts with mistakes. He closes his notebook and leans back, letting the cool air touch his face. He feels calm, grounded, present. He thinks about his future, about the person he wants to become, about the voice he wants to build. And he knows that if he wants to grow, he must allow himself to make mistakes. He must allow himself to speak imperfectly. He must allow himself to be human. And that realization feels like a gift, a quiet gift that changes the way he sees himself. Before he gets up to leave, Daniel whispers something softly into the air, almost like a promise to himself: I will not fear mistakes anymore. And as he walks home with slow, peaceful steps, the world around him feels brighter, not because the sky is fully clear, but because the rain inside his heart has stopped. And that is the day when Daniel finally sees the truth hiding inside mistakes, the truth that mistakes are not failures, but stepping stones, not obstacles, but openings, not signs of weakness, but signs of courage. And from that day forward, he begins to trust in his own growth, one mistake at a time. The next morning begins with a warm sunrise spreading gently across Daniel's room, painting the walls with soft orange light, and as he opens his eyes, he feels something calm inside him, something steady, something new. Like a small flame that has learned how to stand on its own, and he realizes that the fear he used to feel every morning is still there, still part of him, but it no longer fills the whole space of his mind the way it once did. Now there is room for something else. There is room for courage, for curiosity, for a quiet confidence that grows slowly, like a young tree learning to rise toward the sunlight. He sits on the edge of his bed and breathes deeply, and the moment the air moves in and out of his chest, he notices something unusual. His breath feels lighter. His shoulders feel more relaxed. His heartbeat feels calmer, not silent, not perfect, but steadier. He stands up, walks to the mirror, and sees the same face he has always seen, but this time the expression is different. There is a softness in his eyes, a gentleness in the way he looks at himself, as if he is finally learning to be kind to the person staring back. He whispers quietly, almost like a secret between him and his reflection, I'm changing, and even though the words feel small, they feel true. As he walks to school, he feels the world around him with a new kind of awareness, the sound of birds singing somewhere in the distance, the soft wind brushing against his cheeks, the subtle rhythm of his footsteps on the pavement. Everything feels clearer, almost brighter, not because the world has changed, but because he has. And as he approaches the small park, he automatically turns his head toward the bench, half expecting the old man to be there. But the bench is empty again, peaceful and quiet under the morning sun. Daniel stops for a moment and looks at the empty space. Instead of feeling disappointed, he feels grateful because even though the old man is not physically there, his wisdom has become a gentle echo inside Daniel's mind, something he carries with him, something that guides him, something that shapes the person he is becoming. He whispers softly, "Thank you," and then continues walking towards school with a steady, calm pace. When Daniel arrives at class, he notices something surprising. For the first time, he does not feel the usual tightness in his chest. He does not feel the immediate fear of speaking. He does not feel the heavy shadow of failure sitting behind him. Instead, he feels something like anticipation, something like readiness, something like the quiet excitement of someone who knows they are growing. Miss Harper greets the class with her usual warm smile, but today she has a different energy, an excited, glowing energy, and she says, "Today we will do something special. Today, each of you will create a short story using your imagination, and then you will tell it to the class." The room becomes lively with whispers, gasps, laughter. Some students look excited. Some look nervous. Some hide their faces behind notebooks. But Daniel sits in a calm silence, feeling only one thing: curiosity. Miss Harper explains the instructions. Students will write a small, simple story, something they invent, something creative, something fun, with only one rule. The story must have a moment when the main character feels fear and chooses to act anyway. When Daniel hears this rule, his heart warms because he understands fear very well. He has known it for so long that it almost feels like an old companion, but now he is learning to walk with it instead of running from it. He opens his notebook and begins to write. At first, his mind feels empty, like a blank page, untouched, unsure. But then an image appears in his mind, a picture of a small bird standing on the edge of a tall tree branch, looking down at the ground far below. The bird wants to fly but is afraid of falling. Daniel begins writing about this little bird, describing its tiny wings, its trembling legs, the wind touching its feathers, the fear sitting in its chest like a stone. He writes slowly but steadily, letting the picture in his mind guide the words. As he writes, something beautiful happens. The story becomes a mirror of his own journey. The bird wants to fly but does not trust itself. The bird watches other birds soar in the sky and wonders why it cannot be like them. The bird imagines falling, failing, breaking. But then the bird remembers something, a gentle voice, maybe from another bird or maybe from the wind itself, whispering, "You do not learn to fly by sitting still. You learn to fly by trying." And with this quiet encouragement, the little bird spreads its wings and jumps, not because the fear disappears, but because the courage grows enough to let it try. Daniel writes the story with tenderness, with emotion, with honesty, and by the time he finishes, he feels something warm in his chest, something soft and powerful at the same time. When Miss Harper announces that it is time to share their stories, Daniel feels the familiar flutter of fear, but something else rises even faster: courage. And for the first time, courage speaks first. Instead of waiting for his name to be called, instead of hiding behind his quietness, instead of sitting low in his chair hoping not to be chosen, Daniel raises his hand. The class becomes silent for a moment, surprised. Miss Harper's eyes widen a little in pleasant shock, and she smiles brightly. "Yes, Daniel," she says, her voice warm with encouragement. Daniel stands up slowly, holding his notebook gently in his hands, and walks to the front of the room. His steps feel steady, grounded, almost confident. He looks out at his classmates, and for the first time, he doesn't see them as judges. He sees them as people, people who laugh, people who dream, people who fear, people who make mistakes, people who are learning just like he is. And then he begins to read his story. His voice starts soft, as it usually does, but this time the softness does not come from fear. It comes from emotion, from gentleness, from a connection to the story he is telling. As he reads, his voice grows steadier, clearer, warmer. He reads about the little bird and its fear, about its hesitation, about its trembling wings, about the moment it chooses to jump even though it is scared. The class listens silently, fully absorbed. Daniel reaches the part where the bird spreads its wings and discovers that it can fly, not perfectly, not smoothly, but enough to stay in the air, enough to learn, enough to grow. And when he reads that moment aloud, he feels something shift inside him, something bright, something free, something almost like the bird's first flight happening inside his own chest. When he finishes, the room remains silent for a second, a warm, full silence, and then his classmates begin clapping softly at first, then louder, with genuine admiration. Some smile at him. Some nod with respect. Some look inspired. Miss Harper looks at him with shining eyes and says, "Daniel, your story is beautiful. And so is your voice." He feels his throat tighten, not with fear, but with emotion, with gratitude, with the deep realization that something inside him has truly changed. He walks back to his seat, and for the first time, he sits down not with relief that the moment is over, but with pride that he lived through it. After class, several classmates approach him to say they liked his story. Leo smiles and says, "That was amazing." Mia says softly, "Your voice sounded different today. Stronger." Daniel blushes slightly but smiles with genuine happiness. He realizes that by speaking first, by choosing courage before fear, he has opened a new door inside himself. A door he did not know he was capable of opening. A door that leads to a future where he can express himself without hiding, without waiting, without doubting. When he leaves school that day, the sun is high in the sky, and the world feels warm and bright. He walks to the small park again and sits on the familiar bench. He opens his notebook and writes, "Today, courage spoke first." He stares at the sentence, feeling the truth of it settle deep inside him. He thinks about all the moments in his life when fear spoke first, when fear decided everything, when fear convinced him to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay hidden. But today was different. Today he rose. Today he stepped forward. Today he trusted himself. He closes his notebook, leans back on the bench, and looks up at the sky. A small bird flies across his field of vision, wings spread, moving with freedom and ease. Daniel smiles, feeling a gentle connection between his story and the bird above. He whispers softly, "I can fly too." And for the first time in his life, he believes it, not as a dream, not as a hope, but as a real possibility. And that is the moment when courage finally rises before fear, the moment when Daniel discovers that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward even while fear is still there. And in that moment, He begins to understand that his voice, his dreams, his growth, they all have the power to rise as long as courage speaks first. The next morning arrives with a surprising heaviness in the air, the kind of heaviness that comes on days when the sky is full of thick, gray clouds that sit low and wide over the whole town, making everything look a little darker, a little colder, a little quieter. And as Daniel wakes up, he feels that old familiar weight in his chest, the one he thought he had left behind, the one he believed he had already learned to rise above. For a moment, as he sits on the edge of his bed, he feels confused, because yesterday he felt strong, yesterday he felt brave, yesterday he felt light, but today fear is sitting quietly beside him again, waiting like a shadow that returned during the night. He takes a slow breath and tells himself it's okay. Fear comes back. Fear always comes back. And even though he understands this in his mind, his heart still feels heavy, like something has tightened around it without warning. He stands up, walks to the window, and watches the slow movement of the gray clouds drifting across the sky, and he reminds himself gently that courage is not something he learns once. Courage is something he learns again and again. As he walks toward school, the wind blows softly against his face, bringing with it the cool smell of an approaching storm, and in the distance, he hears the low rumble of thunder rolling across the sky, slow and steady. The world around him feels different today, not bright, not warm, not full of the energy he felt yesterday. Instead, everything feels quiet and serious, as if the day itself is challenging him, asking him, "Are you still brave? Are you still growing?" And Daniel tries to answer in his mind, tries to say yes, but the fear inside him whispers louder than he expected. It whispers, what if yesterday was just luck? What if you cannot be brave again? What if you fail today? He tries to shake the thoughts away, but they follow him like cold wind around his ankles. When he reaches the small park, he stops near the familiar bench, the one that has become a symbol of his journey, the one where he first met the old man who changed the direction of his heart. The bench is empty today, wet from a light rain that must have fallen before dawn, and as Daniel looks at it, he remembers the old man's calm voice saying, "Walk with your fear." The memory comforts him for a moment, but then a stronger wave of doubt rises. What if you can't walk with your fear today? What if fear is stronger this time? He takes a slow breath, closes his eyes, and tries to listen to the wind, hoping it brings him a little courage. The wind whispers softly, but does not give him an answer. And so he continues walking toward school, feeling the fear sitting quietly inside him like an uninvited guest. When he arrives in the classroom, he sees his classmates talking and laughing, full of energy, full of life, and he feels a small distance between himself and them, not because they are unkind, but because his mind is full of quiet worries that they cannot see. Miss Harper walks into the room with her usual warm smile, but today Daniel's heart does not rise the way it usually does when he sees her. Instead, his mind tightens again when she says, "Today, we will continue building our confidence by practicing something new." Her words echo in his chest like a heavy bell. Something new, something unknown, something that might challenge him again. Part of him wants to hide. Part of him wants to disappear. Part of him wants to say he is sick and leave the room. But he stays still, silent, waiting, hoping whatever comes next will not break the fragile courage he built yesterday. Ms. Harper explains that today the class will practice speaking in front of the room without reading from a notebook. She says, "Today you will come to the front and tell us something simple. 10 sentences about your day, your hobbies, your dreams, or anything you choose. No notes, no writing, just speaking." The moment she says no notes, Daniel feels his stomach drop. His hands grow cold. His throat tightens. He knows this fear. He knows it very well. Speaking without notes feels like stepping onto a stage without any protection. It feels like walking on a rope without a net. It feels like jumping without wings. Fear whispers again, louder now. You will forget. You will freeze. You will fail. And this time, the whisper feels almost like a shout. Miss Harper asks for volunteers, but today Daniel does not raise his hand. Instead, he lowers his gaze and hopes she does not call his name. He hopes the class continues without him. He hopes he can stay invisible. One by one, students go to the front. Some speak easily. Some hesitate. Some laugh nervously. Some forget a sentence, but keep going. Daniel watches them and feels his chest grow tighter with every passing minute. He sees courage in their movements, in their voices, in their imperfect sentences, but he does not feel strong enough to stand with them today. He feels small again, like he did before this journey began. He feels like the old version of himself, the one who always hid, always stayed quiet, always let fear win. Then Miss Harper says his name. Daniel? His entire body freezes for a moment. His first instinct is to say no, to shake his head, to ask to go last, to pretend he is not ready. But he knows that hiding will only make the fear stronger. He knows that running will only bring the fear back tomorrow. So he takes a slow breath, stands up on shaky legs, and walks to the front of the room. His steps feel heavy, like walking through deep water, and when he reaches the front, he turns to face his classmates. His hands tremble slightly. His heart beats fast. His mind feels empty. He tries to remember what he planned to say, but the fear wipes the thoughts away like waves erasing words written in sand. For a long moment, he stands in silence. The room waits patiently. No one rushes him. No one laughs. No one judges him. But even with the silence being kind, Daniel feels himself shrinking inside it. He opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. The fear inside him whispers, louder than ever, "See? You cannot do this. You will fail. You are not ready." And for a moment, Daniel believes the fear. For a moment, he feels the old shame rise. For a moment, he feels the old pain of thinking he is not enough. But then, something unexpected happens. Daniel hears a soft sound, a gentle breath, a small sigh, and he looks up and sees Miss Harper standing at the back of the room, watching him with warm, patient eyes. She doesn't push him. She doesn't hurry him. She simply nods slowly, with a calm expression that says, "I believe in you." That one simple gesture cracks the fear just a little. And through that small crack, courage begins to slip in. He remembers the old man's voice again, "Walk with your fear," and suddenly, he understands that courage does not mean the fear is gone. Courage means speaking while the fear sits beside him. Courage means stepping forward even when his whole body feels frozen. Daniel takes a slow breath. He opens his mouth again. This time, a tiny whisper comes out, just one simple sentence. "Today I woke up feeling afraid." The class stays perfectly still, listening. Daniel continues, "But I came here anyway." His voice grows a little stronger. "And even though I am scared right now, I want to try." The fear inside him shakes, but it does not stop him. He begins to speak about his morning, about the gray clouds, about walking past the park, about thinking of the old man, about remembering the courage he felt yesterday. The more he talks, the more his voice grows steady. His sentences are simple. His grammar is not perfect. He pauses often, but he keeps going. And with each sentence he speaks, the fear loses some of its power. By the time he reaches sentence number 10, Daniel feels something rising inside him, not excitement, not pride, but something deeper, strength. A quiet, steady strength that feels like it has been waiting inside him for a long time, waiting for this exact moment to finally shine. When he finishes, he lets out a long breath that feels like letting go of a heavy stone he has been carrying in his chest. The class begins to clap softly, with kindness, with respect, and Miss Harper smiles at him with the warmest eyes he has ever seen. When Daniel returns to his seat, his hands are still shaking, but something feels different. The fear did not win. The fear tried to return, tried to control him, tried to silence him, but Daniel spoke anyway. He feels the truth of that deep in his chest. He feels a quiet victory blooming inside him, soft like a flower growing through cold ground. After class, as he walks through the hallway, he feels lighter, not because the fear is gone, but because he faced it. When he steps outside, the wind has changed. It feels warmer now, gentler, as if the storm has passed even though the sky is still filled with clouds. He walks toward the small park, sits on the familiar bench, and opens his notebook. At the top of the page, he writes, "Courage is not loud. Courage is showing up when fear returns." He looks at those words for a long time. Then he closes the notebook and leans back, feeling a calm pride settle into his heart. He understands something important now. Fear will always return, again and again, but so will courage. Fear may knock loudly, but courage whispers, and the whisper is strong enough to change everything if he chooses to listen to it. And that is the day Daniel learns the truth. Courage is not a final victory, but a daily choice, a soft decision to stand up again, even when fear tries to pull you down. And on that gray, quiet day, he chooses courage, and the choice becomes a turning point in the story of his life. Thank you so much for joining today's lesson here at JBC English Learning Academy. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling me what you want to learn next. Your support helps the channel grow and helps me create more lessons for you. Take care, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next class.